Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Ready to get our hands dirty with some project management?
Always.
Well, today we're tackling something pretty crucial, project management in the development sector. Our listeners send over the Project DPro guide, and let me tell you, it is jam-packed with insights. We're basically going on a deep dive into how to manage projects that actually make a difference.
And I think what's so cool about this guide is it really gets that development project. I mean, they're not just about like checking things off a list, you know? They're about making real, lasting change in some really, really tough situations.
Absolutely. So much more to it. So before we get into all the specifics, can we just kind of set the scene for our listener? What does it even mean to manage, a project that's actually trying to change the world? What makes it different?
Okay, imagine, right? You're working on a project to bring clean water to a village, right? You're not just thinking about budgets and timelines, though. That's super important, of course. But you're also dealing with cultural stuff, how the community works, and you got to be really careful not to overstep or create problems, you know?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So it's not just about your project management skills. It's also about building trust, working together, and making sure that what you're doing actually helps people in the long run.
Yeah, way more nuanced than managing a tech project or something. The human side is huge.
Absolutely. And that's where this guide comes in. It's like a roadmap built just for people working in development. It gets the unique challenges and gives you real practical advice.
Love it. Okay, let's dig into it then. The guide starts by defining a project as a temporary thing, as a start and finish, and it's all about creating specific results that you can measure. And it really hammers home the point that good project management, it's all about juggling these key constraints: time, budget, scope, and risk.
Right. But it's not just about hitting deadlines and staying under budget. It's about getting how those practical things connect with the ethical side of development work, the values that drive it.
Makes total sense. It's not just efficiency, it's responsibility too.
Yeah.
And the guide uses this analogy of the the triple constraint triangle to show how these constraints are all connected. Can you break that down a bit?
Okay, picture a triangle. Each corner is time, budget, or scope, right? And they're all pulling on each other. So let's say you're running a project after a natural disaster, getting supplies to people. If suddenly way more people need help, you got to change the scope. But boom, that instantly impacts your budget and how long the whole thing takes.
I see.
A good project manager has to always be thinking about that balance, making decisions that take into account how everything's connected.
So thinking a few steps ahead, like chess, huh? Okay, now the DPro guide lays out these 5 phases for managing these types of projects. Let's start with that first one, identification and definition. Why is this so important, especially for development work?
This is where your project, comes to life. But it all begins with truly understanding what's needed, what the situation really is. You can't just have a good idea. You got to really assess the needs, figure out the problem you're trying to solve, and the community has to be a part of that from the very beginning.
So it's going deeper than just surface level, getting to the root causes and all the complexities. The guide talks about these 4 categories of needs from Bradshaw, I think. Yeah. Can you explain those?
Oh yeah, Bradshaw's categories are super helpful. They basically push us to go beyond just asking folks what they need. So you have felt needs, that's what people themselves feel they need, right? Then express needs, what people actually say or demand. And then there's normative needs, stuff that experts identify based on standards and data. And lastly, comparative needs. So looking at what one group has compared to another. When you look at all 4, you get a way better understanding of the real needs a community has.
Wow, that's fascinating. It really shows how a development project manager isn't just about ticking boxes. It's about research and analysis too. So once we've nailed down what the project is all about, what's next on our DPro journey?
Project setup. Think of it like laying the foundation for a building. You need a solid structure for governance, clear roles, who does what, and you got to figure out the project manager's tolerances.
Tolerances, how much freedom they have to make decisions without always asking permission.
Bingo. Let's say you're running a vaccination campaign. Does the project manager need to call a big meeting every time the schedule changes because of rain? Probably not, right? Figuring out those tolerances beforehand, it lets the project manager be flexible, react quickly, while still keeping everything aligned with the big goals.
Right, so you don't get bogged down with bureaucracy.
Exactly.
So we've got the project defined, our structure's up, now we got to get into the details of planning. What does DPro emphasize in this phase?
Okay, this is where we create the roadmap. You make the detailed schedule, realistic budgets, and a solid plan for monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, or, meal. The guide's got a whole bunch of techniques and tools for all of this.
It even goes into specific scheduling tools, like the work breakdown structure, where you break everything down into smaller tasks, and those network diagrams, showing how everything's connected. It even uses real examples from, like, the Delta River latrine project, which is really helpful.
It is very hands-on. And when it comes to budgets, the guide's big on picking the right way to estimate costs. It even mentions activity-based budgeting to make sure you're accurate. And for the meal part, it's not just a one-time check at the end. It's about constantly monitoring and evaluating as you go.
So the project manager is thinking about data and analysis right from the get-go. It's about that feedback loop, right?
Yep, built in from the start. And it's not just about, checking if you're doing things right. It's about learning and changing as you go.
Okay, plans are made, meal system is ready, now it's showtime project implementation. What's crucial in this phase, according to the guide?
This is where the magic happens, but it's also where the project manager really has to be a jack of all trades. Leader, communicator, problem solver, and ready to adapt on the fly. Because let's face it, things almost never go exactly as planned. Managing risks, dealing with problems, making changes as you go, that's essential.
The guide mentions this earned value analysis as a way to see if you're on track. How does that work?
Imagine you're building a school, right? Earned value analysis. It's it helps you compare what you've actually done to your budget and schedule. Are you overspending? Behind schedule? Right on target? It gives you the data you need to decide if you need to, change course.
Right. Super useful. And it also talks about this issue log, right? To keep track of all the problems that pop up.
Oh, yeah. A good issue log, it helps you spot patterns, see how you're doing with solving those problems, and even prevent similar ones from happening again. It's all about being proactive.
Got it. Now, what about these decision gates? I'm curious about those.
Okay, think of decision gates as checkpoints along the way. You stop, the team and the key players, everyone reviews progress, looks at the risks again, and decides, do we move to the next phase? Do we adjust the plan? Or do we, hit the brakes altogether?
So it's like built-in moments to make sure you're still on track and not just running on autopilot.
Exactly. They force you to step back and make those course corrections before it's too late.
Smart. And then finally, we reach the last stop, project closure. What's the focus here in DPro?
It's not just about finishing the to-do list and handing in reports. It's about making sure the project has a lasting impact, like a legacy. So you focus on sustainability, doing really thorough evaluations, figuring out what you learned, and celebrating the wins, of course.
So it's about making sure what you've built or the changes you've made, they stick around even after the project is officially over.
Exactly. You want to make sure the community benefits even after everyone's packed up and gone. That might mean handing things over to a local partner, training people in the community, or pushing for policy changes that support what you've done.
It's about making the impact part of the community itself, not just a temporary fix.
Yes. And for the project manager, it means thinking long-term, building strong relationships that last beyond the project itself.
Wow, this has been a great overview of the 5 DPro phases. But the guide doesn't stop there, does it? There are these core principles that underpin the whole approach. Let's dive into those next.
Yeah, the phases are like the structure, but these principles, they're the heart of DPro. They're what makes development project management, effective and ethical.
Right, makes sense. So let's get into it. The first principle is comprehensive. What's that all about?
Think of it like this, a development project. It's not just this isolated thing, right? It's part of a bigger system with all these connections and relationships. Comprehensive means you got to consider all of that, not just the obvious stuff.
So taking a holistic view, understanding the whole context the project's in.
Exactly. The guide talks about stuff like risk management, logistics, internal controls, things that people sometimes forget, but they can really make or break a project.
Oh, for sure.
Take risk management. Say you're doing an agriculture project in a place where droughts happen a lot. A comprehensive approach would mean not just, oh yeah, there might be a drought, but actually coming up with plans to deal with it, like using crops that can handle drought or investing in irrigation.
That's so key, anticipating those problems and having a plan B, basically. Okay, next we've got well-governed. What does that mean in practice?
It's about having really clear lines of who's in charge, who's responsible for what, and who answers to whom. A well-governed project has a strong structure, clear roles, and everyone knows how decisions are made.
The guide mentions this RTI matrix, right? to figure out who's responsible, accountable, consulted, informed for each part of the project. Seems like a good way to avoid confusion.
Totally. Imagine you're building a health center, right? With our RACI matrix, you know exactly who's finding the land, who's managing the money, who needs to be involved in the design, and who just needs to be kept updated.
Love that clarity. Okay, now participatory. This one seems super important in development. Why is that?
Because development projects are all about empowering people, right? Giving them ownership. Participatory means you're not just swooping in with solutions, you're working with the community to make things better.
So it's moving away from that top-down approach, right? True collaboration.
Yep. The guide's really big on engaging stakeholders through the whole project, from the needs assessment at the very beginning to the evaluation at the end. That might mean community meetings, focus groups, feedback systems, anything that lets people share their thoughts and concerns and contribute their ideas.
It's about making sure the project really reflects what the community wants and needs. Okay, integrated is next. What's the emphasis here?
Integrated is a reminder that a project isn't just a bunch of separate pieces, it's a whole system where everything's connected.
Got it. So recognizing those connections and making sure all the parts work together smoothly.
Right. Like understanding that if you change the budget, that might impact the timeline or what you could actually achieve. And it also means thinking about how your project fits with your organization's bigger goals and other projects happening in the area.
So thinking about the big picture, how everything fits together. Makes sense. Okay, and lastly, we have adaptive. Why is being adaptable so important in development work?
Well, think about it. Things are always changing, especially in the context where a lot of development work happens. New information pops up, you hit unexpected roadblocks. Adaptive means you got to be flexible, ready to change your plans when you need to.
Roll with the punches, basically.
Yeah.
The guide mentions decision gates as a tool for this, right?
Yes. Those decision gates, they're like those checkpoints we talked about. They give you a chance to stop, think, get feedback, and then decide, do we keep going, tweak the plan, or maybe even stop altogether?
Built-in flexibility.
Aww.
I like it. Okay, so we've gone through these 5 principles of DPro. Comprehensive, well-governed, participatory, integrated, and adaptive. They really show what it takes to manage a development project, both effectively and ethically.
For sure, and they show the kind of mindset and skills you need as a development project manager. It's not just about the technical stuff, it's about leadership, communication, knowing how to work with people, and understanding the development context.
The guide makes it clear that there's no one right way to do project management. It encourages people to adapt DPro to their own situation and the needs of their specific project.
Totally. DPro is a great foundation, but it's not like a set of rules you have to follow exactly. A good project manager will use it as a toolbox, picking the tools and techniques that work best for their project.
So let's say our listener is feeling inspired and wants to become a rockstar development project manager. What advice does the guide have for putting these principles into action?
One big thing is to start early. Don't wait till the project's already rolling to start thinking about governance, risks, or stakeholder engagement. The guide even suggests that when you're writing the proposal, you should already be thinking about how to make it well-governed and participatory.
Plan ahead. Makes sense. It also talks a lot about risk assessment, not just doing it once, but continuously throughout the project.
Definitely. Risks can pop up anytime, and things change fast. A good project manager is always looking out for potential problems, figuring out how likely they are and how bad they could be, and coming up with ways to prevent them or minimize the damage. And they'll get the stakeholders involved too, because the community often has the best understanding of the local risks.
The guide also gets into the details of budgeting, right? Being accurate, transparent, and responsible with the money.
Yep. It talks about activity-based budgeting to get a really detailed breakdown of costs and make sure the funds are being used wisely. It stresses how important it is to involve the finance people early on and create realistic budgets that reflect the real costs.
So no fuzzy math. Being good with finances is a must for a development project manager.
Absolutely. And clear communication is key too, both within the team and with people outside the project. The guide suggests making a communication plan that lays out who needs to know what, when they need to know it, and how you're going to tell them.
That's crucial, especially when you're working with different groups of people who might have different ways of communicating.
For sure. And it emphasizes the importance of documenting everything. Decisions, agreements, any changes to the plan. That way there's a clear record and everyone's on the same page.
Just like a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
but I can see how it would prevent misunderstandings and help everyone stay accountable.
It does, and it's important for showing donors and stakeholders that you're being transparent. The guide also talks about the importance of building a strong, motivated team.
Right, because ultimately it's the people who make a project happen.
Exactly. It suggests doing a human resources assessment to figure out what skills you need for each role, and then investing in training to fill any gaps.
So it's not just about hiring the right people. It's about giving them the support they need to succeed.
Exactly. The guide also says to be clear about roles and responsibilities from the beginning, using that raw CI matrix we talked about so everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And it highlights the importance of creating a positive team environment where people feel valued and motivated to do their best work.
Which brings us to what makes managing development projects so unique. It's not just about the technical stuff, it's also about working with people, navigating all those complex human dynamics. What insights does the guide offer on that front?
One key thing is that project managers need to be good at building relationships and trust with all the different stakeholders. That means understanding their perspectives, what motivates them, what they might be worried about, and finding ways to involve them in a meaningful and respectful way. It really is. The guide emphasizes that stakeholder engagement isn't just like checking a box. It's about building real partnerships that help the project succeed and have that lasting impact. It's about recognizing that the community brings so much knowledge and experience to the table.
Absolutely. And it mentions, again, how important clear, transparent communication is, both within the team and with everyone outside the project. Being upfront about challenges, sharing the wins, and actively asking for feedback throughout.
Right, it keeps everyone in the loop. And, the guide acknowledges that conflict is bound to happen in any project, especially when you have people with different backgrounds and priorities all working together.
Oh, yeah, that's realistic.
So it suggests having a plan for how to deal with conflict, making sure disagreements are handled in a way that's constructive and respectful. That might mean having clear communication channels, creating a space where people feel safe to speak their minds, or even using mediation to help people find common ground.
It's about having those tools ready to go so you can navigate those bumps in the road and turn them into something positive.
Exactly. And the project manager, they play a big role in creating that team culture where people feel comfortable disagreeing but can still work together and respect each other.
So the project manager needs to be a bit of a peacemaker too.
In a way, yes. But at the end of the day, the guide reminds us that managing development projects, it's really about making a positive difference in the world. It's about using your skills to make things better, to make things more fair and just.
Remembering that behind all the plans and the data, there are real people whose lives are affected by the work.
Exactly. And that's what keeps you going, keeps you motivated to do your best. The guide actually encourages project managers to, check in with themselves, think about their own motivations and values, and make sure those align with the project's goals and what the community needs.
That's a good point, keeping your own compass aligned. Well, it sounds like the Project DPro guide really does give development project managers a full toolbox, everything they need to handle those complexities and make a real impact.
I think so, yeah. But even with the best tools and all the knowledge, it's important to remember that project management in this field, it's not just about ticking boxes and meeting deadlines. It's about people, about building trust, about staying true to those values that drive this work, empowerment, sustainability, fairness. It's about leading with your heart as well as your head.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a real pleasure unpacking all of this with you. So for our listeners out there who are ready to jump into the world of development project management, what's one piece of advice you'd leave them with?
Remember that it's not just about the end product, it's about the journey. The relationships you build, the people you empower. Embrace the challenges, celebrate the wins, and never forget that your work has the power to change lives.
Beautifully put. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of development project management. We hope you found it helpful and inspiring. And until next time, keep diving deep.